Thank you very much for that lovely and warm and kind introduction, Margaret. It's been a long time since we've connected, so I'm really pleased that technology allows us to do so. um, Before we started just the talk, I just wanted to maybe share a minute of silence with everyone. And thank you. It was I feel this topic for me is something I've definitely experienced in life, and it was a fairly easy one to pick because I think when you've gone through something like this, it shows you that you never want to be there again. But it also, when you've gone through it and come through the other side, it gives you hope that you've understood yourself better and that you're able to really let go of whatever aspects of the past that have really created these feelings of disheartenment. And when I think recently I've been very touched by what's been happening in Beirut, in Lebanon, particularly because that whole country has faced an economic collapse that is unprecedented, shortly followed by the wave of COVID, and then more recently followed by that massive explosion, which has destroyed many, many lives, and certainly creates a much deeper feeling in the hearts of those that live there, where there is a real feeling of hopelessness. And I know joining the meditations with the family in the Middle East and with some of the souls in Lebanon, it was such a powerful way to just give through vibrations of love and good wishes and peace, and just to spread that wave of vibrations so that whoever is suffering, wherever they're suffering, they can experience those feelings of peace. And I remember a time when I didn't necessarily believe in the power of vibrations until I met someone in Israel who had gone through a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. And she explained to me how at certain points through her suffering, she experienced waves of feeling so tranquil and peaceful, almost as if someone out there was looking out for her. And that really touched me, because we don't often realize how powerful our positive vibrations can be, and how we can just switch our awareness to really channel those qualities, because at the very core of who we are, there is only goodness. And it's how we've just lost touch with that inner goodness that keeps us really in this place of suffering. And I know from my own experience, when situations in life has battered me, obstacles or challenges or relationships, there can be such a tormented inner dialogue that takes place, not just in the mind, but through our emotions. And when those energies, and I think energies are probably the right word, those heavy energies increase inside of us because they're constantly rumbling, actually it creates such a tremendous load inside of us. And I know my whole journey has really been, certainly on the spiritual since I've been awakened spiritually, I felt the joys of experiencing this feeling of goodness, my inner goodness. But equally, I've really begun to see where the ego is hurting me, and I feel this is the journey of where on the one side we can really see our value and learn about our value, but equally we begin to see stuff about us that we may not necessarily want to change, that we may find very difficult to change. Some of these thought patterns that create our suffering. And when I'm talking about disheartenment specifically, what I connect with disheartenment is inner rejection. And I feel this is such a big topic, and I want to take up some aspects of inner rejection and how this leads to disheartenment, and how we can begin the process of just releasing myself away from it. So I'll share very much from the experiences I've had and some of the teachings that I've really taken on board in the Brahma Kumaris that have changed and transformed my life. Particularly when we talk about situations on the outside affecting us on the inside, we see two worlds. We see the outside, the world around us, and our interactions with people, situations, obstacles, and life in general. And then how those events and situations and relationships affect our inner world. And more often than not, we are so programmed, or the ego is so programmed, that when something affects us from the outside, our instinctive nature or habit patterns are to blame that which is causing our own emotions and feelings to disrupt. And going through life in this way, I realized for myself at one point was I found that my inner stability came from everything on the outside being okay. And I feel the world is certainly teaching us through situations like COVID, through natural disasters, through economic collapse, instability is rife. And where I've created my sense of stability from that which is outside, it will absolutely rock me. There is no question. There is no question. If anything changes on the outside, I will be affected on the inside. And we spend so much of our lives trying to control stuff on the outside, whether it's people, whether it's situations, whether it's events. But we all know, and I think that exhausts us, I know it did me, that we get to a point where we just can't, where everything on the outside is punishing us to such a point where we actually begin to lose hope, because we can't seem to navigate and can't seem to address what is happening to us from the outside. And I know, I don't know whether any of you have been, have experienced this, but I know that, you know, disheartenment can come in many different situations. Sometimes it can emerge when I feel trapped in a situation or something that I'm doing that isn't making me happy. And I continue, you know, and I may continue for years just doing that thing, or being in that relationship or being in that situation. But internally, what it's doing is actually it's damaging me significantly, because I'm not able to really reconcile what is happening on the outside and what is happening at the level of feelings and thoughts on the inside. And when this carries on for a while, one of the first things we tend to lose is self-confidence, is hope in ourselves or trust in ourselves. And I feel this is such a big thing when we're talking about inner rejection, because more often than not, it starts really when I ignore my feelings and when I tend to suppress them. And I know in my journey, I didn't really have a manual to learn about my emotions and feelings, I had to really figure that out for myself. And I just started journaling one day and just expressing myself exactly as I was. And I found that when I started journaling about my emotions and feelings, I was really liberated from them. I felt free from them. And I actually began to understand this inner being in more detail. And not just understand, but learn to accept. And I feel this is the bridge, really, where there are feelings of anger internally. Anger towards ourselves is just an energy of dislike. You know, in human relationships, when we are angry towards somebody or when we dislike somebody, we carry a subtle energy of anger towards them. It's different to disliking an object. You know, we can say, oh, I like this shirt and I don't like this shirt, or I like to eat this and I don't like to eat this. But when I say I don't like somebody, yeah, or I dislike somebody, then actually there's an energy of anger that's vibrating from you to them. Or and generally, when that's the case, what you will find is there will be some aspect of their nature that is triggering that anger inside of you. And more often than not, you will find it's their anger that's triggering your anger. And I realized I did this exercise once where I wrote down a list of 5 names. And these 5 names were individuals in my life that pressed my buttons. And I think all of us have that list. Well, I hope all of us have that list. Otherwise, it was just me. But it was so insightful just to go through that exercise, because I learned from that it was certain aspects of their nature that triggered anger inside of me, or triggered feelings of dislike towards them. And when I looked back at these traits, all of them were anger on their side. So it's their anger that triggered my anger. And interestingly, when I create anger towards somebody in that way, then my subtle attitude towards them will be one of rejection. I will find myself subtly dismissing what they're saying, maybe avoiding them, maybe even ignoring them, maybe judging them, somehow disrespecting them. And so these subtle vibrations begin to reach individuals, you know, when you're not able to be fully cooperative with them, because some part of your attitude is vibrating this energy of rejection. And so it's interesting how dislike, when you have dislike towards somebody, you can't accept them as they are. Yeah, completely as they are. We are affected by them. And so therefore, when you can't accept somebody as they are, we tend to reject them. And where there is rejection, we can't have any form of kindness towards them. And that situation begins to affect us. And when we just turn that inwards towards ourselves and recognize that if I'm not able to accept myself as I am, then at some level I must be rejecting myself. And then I think it begins to paint a clearer picture of how we're directing anger internally. And often we don't realize how much dislike we are directing towards ourselves, because the weight of anger, I think as human beings, as souls, we just have this natural capacity to absorb pain and keep moving, regardless of what is happening on the inside. We just find a way of moving forward, but we are surviving in life. We're not thriving. We're not living. We are just dragging ourselves from one day to another. And when that energy is present, and just like when you witness a scene when somebody's been angry from one person to another, actually there's a real heavy atmosphere. You can see that when you've had an angry outburst, it leaves you so drained, you know, and it leaves you energetically weakened inside. but we don't necessarily recognize the weight of internal anger, because we just adapt to it, because it becomes our new normal. And this is an interesting thing to observe, in how we feel about ourselves and how much weight we're carrying internally. And when situations affect us to that extent, where we feel as though we can't do anything about that we have this feeling of submission, that's when we have deep feelings of disheartenment present. And I was just looking up the dictionary definition of disheartenment, and it was really accurate in terms of in terms of the relevancy to this talk. Disheartenment was defined as the feeling of despair in the face of obstacles, and despair was defined as the feeling that everything is wrong and nothing will turn out well. And it's an energy, it's like a heavy energy. As soon as I see a situation or an obstacle or that person again, I feel this feeling that just sinks internally. And with that comes this lethargic, tired, zapping feeling where I have no energy to bring my best into a situation. And that largely stems from how we have been affected, or how we've created thoughts and emotions internally that we haven't taken full responsibility for. And more often than not, we're still in this process of blaming the external situation. And I think when we are in this cycle of disheartenment, we can be in three phases. And the first phase is, we may feel it, but we may be in complete denial. Yeah, we just don't want to acknowledge it. We don't want to go there. We just want to keep going. So we're in denial. The second phase for me is that we know that we're experiencing disheartenment, but we don't necessarily know how to help ourselves. And so we end up continuing to suffer and continuing to experience further pain as a result of disheartenment. And the third is the worst place to be, which is, we know that we're disheartened, and we know how to help ourselves, but we just don't know, but we just won't do it. And that's a very dangerous place to be, where we know where to start, but we don't feel like we want to. And so we become ignorant of, and it is ignorance, we become ignorant of how we can really pick ourselves back up again and start. And I can understand that, because I can talk from my own experience in knowing that when I've gone through that period for myself, the energy of disheartenment is so heavy that actually you don't feel like doing much. It can just leave us feeling lethargic, unable to make simple decisions, unable to really interact or engage in the world, unable to deal with any uncertainty around us. So we find ourselves feeling internally powerless and helpless and easily affected and sensitive. And these subtle signs really point to a lack of internal spiritual energy, which requires a tremendous amount of self-love and kindness to change. And it's very possible, but because we become so used to living this way, we accept that that is normal. And we just think this is how life is. And so when I really ignore my feelings and suppress them when they're trying to tell me something, then that form of self-rejection means I'm not accepting myself as I am. And that inner anger continues. Where there is anger, there can't be peace. And when that's left unchecked, that rejection eventually turns into a lack of low self-esteem, a lack of self-confidence. It shatters any feeling of hope that I have internally, because the energies internally are just heavy and are keeping me at that same level. And it's, I like to show, kind of, when a situation is at this level, a situation that's causing us pain, and we are affected by it, and we start creating thoughts and emotions at this level. Yeah, this is the lower level. Then actually that begins to clash. We can't find a resolution. So we end up analyzing the situation over and over and over in our heads and never coming to any resolution. If anything, it leaves us even more drained, and it leaves us even more confused, and it leaves us even more disheartened. And so we're not able to work at the same level that we're creating thought. So if this is the situation, the relationship, the obstacle that I'm facing, and I'm automatically affected by it, and I'm creating thoughts and emotions, then that will just clash with the situation. I'm just not able to rise above it. And in order to rise above it, actually what we do need is to break that link and focus completely on ourselves. Absolutely on ourselves. Yeah. Because when we energize, then the situation isn't going anywhere. It's still waiting for us, but it no longer begins to affect us. And that's where when there's a feeling of internal energy that increases in our life, then we're able to face obstacles with renewed hope and spiritual energy, because that's all it is. This situation has just worn us down and battered us because we haven't seen or learned how to acknowledge and see and accept these signs internally and deal with them with a lot of love and kindness. Instead, we reject them, push them down, push them away, distract ourselves, do anything other than face ourselves with love and kindness. And I feel that the bigger pandemic that is occurring in the world at the moment is the one of anger, where there is so much internal anger in human beings that is not being faced, that is destroying people's sense of self-worth, eroding it. And anger is one of these destructive energies that will ultimately leave you feeling broken if it's not dealt with. And often when I'm hard on myself, this is a clear sign that I'm turning anger within. And we can be so destructively hard on ourselves without realizing it. And my self-talk begins to tell me how distressing I can be to myself, or I can feel just towards what's happening in my inner world, in my mind. We can make small mistakes and we can judge ourselves incredibly harshly. Or you start a new routine and you fail once, and all of a sudden, bang, you are a failure. You're the worst thing. All of that inner being hard on myself just comes out. More inner rejection is taking place. More anger is brewing at myself. And when this level of anger is happening internally, we can't experience any form of kindness. We can't experience any progress because we just haven't got anything left in the tank. No energy left in the tank. And so I feel the attention that really needs to be paid when we begin this process as a start is actually just one of caring for ourselves. Really as simple as putting an arm around ourselves and just saying, it's okay. And often, and I remember a time when I went through the depth of where I was at, and I was lying in my bed, and I had to put my arms around me and just say, you're going to be okay. I had to do that physically, because we don't know how much that inner torment is affecting us until we get to that rock bottom stage where we realize, do you know what? I need to pick myself back up. And if it's left unchecked to such a great extent, it can lead to mental breakdown, at which point we lose the ability to make choices. But where we still have this ability to take control of our minds and our emotions and make choices, it's really important to make those choices. And often it just requires us to create space between us and whatever it is in our life that is creating those feelings of disheartenment, and really focus exclusively on the self. And I know in my own journey that truth plays a big part in getting to understand my emotions and feelings. If you're not truthful with yourself about what's actually happening in the situation, what are you creating in the situation that's creating your pain, then we can't change. We absolutely can't change. But I also realize that when I'm low and I have no energy left, and when I'm spiritually depleted, being truthful is not an option, because it's the hardest thing to do. And instead of being truthful, we end up seeing our weaknesses and seeing our defects, and it just makes us feel even lower. So we think we're being honest, but actually we're being self-judgmental, more in our anger, more disheartenment, more feeling low. And so what we have to do, because the mind gets caught up in a habitual thinking pattern when we have experienced deep feelings of disheartenment, and that seems to continue every single day, maybe for years, and I'm feeling so low I can't really do anything about that. We're locked in a way of thinking and feeling that we just can't break. And we have to break that cycle and find a time to break that cycle. And any sort of transformation requires that injection of effort, positive effort. You know, when we go to the gym and we haven't been for a few months or maybe even a few years, it's probably the hardest day, that first day, right? We know we'll go into the gym. We don't necessarily feel it, but we know we have to do it. We have to face it. We have to put ourselves into that discipline. We've got to feel that pain. And then after a week, things get better. And it's the same for if we're not used to exercising the mind and the heart in a positive way. We have to nourish it, but initially it will really challenge us. As soon as you start to introduce something positive in your life, no sooner have you started will the inner critic come flying out and tell you harder and faster how you won't be able to do it, how it's the wrong thing for you to do, how you should focus on something completely different. Yeah. And it's just recognizing that that's how the subconscious mind works, because changing those patterns internally requires us rewiring ourselves. And rewiring sometimes requires breakdown. We have to break patterns by creating new patterns. And so one of the simplest ways, and I like simple, one of the simplest ways that we can break the cycle of this repeated negative thinking, this deep, heavy thinking and feeling about ourselves, because when we're in this space of disheartenment, it just continues. Whatever is creating these thoughts and feelings, situations-wise, will just keep on hammering us. And we end up feeling tired in the evenings. The last thing we may say to ourselves when we go to bed is, I'm tired. And then when we wake up again, the first thing we say to ourselves is, I'm tired. And then as soon as we've said that, that sets the pattern for our entire day. We start feeling tired. We then look at the news. We see the depressing news. We see some stories. We read information that affects us even more. And then all of a sudden, all of the negative stuff keeps coming back again. And that cycle just continues from day and night. Again, day and night, day and night. So breaking that cycle at some point is really necessary. And the first place to break it is the first thing you do in the morning. And as soon as your eyes open, if you're able to read out some statements to yourself that are uplifting, you're breaking that pattern. This may feel like a small thing, but actually what it's doing at a deeper subconscious level is very powerful. Because in the first few weeks, you may not even feel what you are saying to yourself. But trust me when I say that when you break that cycle, something disrupts internally. And disruption is the agent for change. If there is no disruption, there is no change. And so we have to gently disrupt, and that disruption will allow us to feed off positive energy in a different way. So the first thing that you could say to yourself is that I'm a positive being, full of energy. And often we just need to recognize where we are, and just write down a series of very positive, loving affirmations, kind affirmations. Today, I'm going to be kind to myself. Today, I'm going to talk nicely to myself. These are positive statements that when I reinforce and I'm speaking them out aloud and my ears hear them, the inner being snaps back into a better state. And I often find there's two types of self-talk. There's the internal self-talk, and we're so used to the negative internal self-talk that says, you're no good, you're going to fail. And we just accept that. It just comes up in our heads and we just say, yeah, fine, yeah, no problem. So we have this negative self-talk that convinces us straight away. And as soon as we say something nice to us, we kind of like, we're not sure about it. We're not sure it's going to work. And that is disheartenment, really, isn't it? When we've lost faith in our own goodness in that way. And so in order to reestablish hope, we have to inject positivity and good wishes. And good wishes are nothing more than specific, directed statements of kindness towards myself first. Forget the situation. That situation is still vibrating whatever energy it is towards you. You cannot do anything about it. We have to take control of your inner world and just stabilize things internally and then strengthen. So when I start off with those positive statements at the start of my day, then things change. And then no sooner you've said those statements, you can start with a 10-minute guided meditation commentary. And I'm sure the team at Inner Space in Bradford will have links to many free resources of some amazing guided meditations by some of our best teachers around the world. And these meditations are spoken with that loving vibration of kindness. So when you listen to them first thing in the morning, you're actually injecting not low vibration content, heavy content, but you're injecting high vibration, positive, uplifting content in your mind. It's the first thing the mind absorbs. And when that's the first thing the mind absorbs, there is energy in the mind. And actually that is significantly breaking your pattern. And then you start your day feeling peaceful. And then you bring that peace into situations that you begin to face. Yeah. And it's funny that when we experience that real depth of inner peace, the first feeling that we have towards it is we want to protect it. We don't want to disrupt it. So when we see ourselves in situations that are about to rock us, we remind ourselves that actually today, I won't let this affect my inner peace. Today, I just want to be in peace. It's just a natural instinct. When we haven't experienced that peace, we will easily be affected by these situations. And when we start our day tired and affected, then everything is going to affect us, because that is the lens through which we will see. So breaking that pattern of the repeated negative thoughts and emotions at the start of my day, vital. And when it comes to meditation, I don't necessarily mean quantity. I'm all about consistency and quality. And when we're starting to create a consistent practice of meditation and connecting with this inner being and recognizing my own highest qualities of peace, of happiness, of love, of, wisdom, of joy, then actually I'm recognizing that I am a good person, and I am repeating that back to myself. And peace is the starting point. Where there is peace, there will be love. You can't experience love without peace. And where peace and love exist, there will be happiness. And so when I'm directing energy of a kind energy towards myself and a loving energy towards myself, then actually I will experience contentment and kind of this experience of satisfaction and joy in my life again. But first starting point has to be inner peace, to quieten the mind, to consider my good qualities, and to really embrace a positive thought pattern that will disrupt this negative cloud of heaviness that sits above me. The second practice, which I feel is the transformer, is meditation creates the space in my inner world and creates the charge for me to be able to face different situations and obstacles and relationships with strength. The second is being able to express my feelings exactly as they are. And just having one question, what's bothering you, and writing freely before you go to bed. 5 minutes of cathartic writing, just expressing how you felt in a journal. That, when it comes from what is happening in your heart space, it will just fly out. And when you write in that way, you will feel lighter. And I know that from my own experience of trying to figure out what was actually happening in my inner world. When I started writing for the first time, I actually couldn't read my writing. The pen would move so quickly and it would make so many spelling mistakes. I felt so light at the end of it. And that was the beauty of being able to acknowledge my emotions and feelings, that actually the heart speaks in a very simple way. It doesn't complicate things. It's our mind that complicates things. So we may be writing and then all of a sudden my mind is thinking that I need to write a bestseller, that I need to write, that I need to use some fancy words when I'm writing. No, when the heart speaks, it will speak simple. I am hurt. This is what is affecting me. Like children speak to adults. They speak in a very direct way. And that's how the heart needs to be able to express itself. And often we can turn to other people when we're affected in this way, but without realizing that we are draining, we are using them as an emotional support. And at times that may feel comforting for us, but it doesn't help us in any way. It doesn't help us change our patterns of thought and feelings. If anything, it leaves them drained. And when somebody, and maybe we know somebody in our lives that emotionally latches onto us, actually it's incredibly draining. And we can't actually help them because they don't want to be helped. They just want to latch on and experience that distraction so that they don't have to deal with those issues. And we may find ourselves doing that to other people. And that's not a relationship. That is a significant dependency where I'm energetically draining somebody and somebody's feeling energetically drained. But when I'm able to create that relationship of kindness internally and face my inner world, then things change. So 2 small practices to really think about that anyone can start at any time, but it does require us to commit. And I remember a time when I came to the Brahma Kumaris and I didn't really understand much about the systems and the processes they had. But I eventually learned that this university is showing us how to deeply connect with the inner being, understand it, and then adapt our lifestyles so that we can keep coming from that space. Every aspect of this lifestyle, whether it's regular meditation, whether it's positive thinking, whether it's learning about our qualities and virtues and applying them, whether it's lifestyle aspects such as the food you eat and the way you eat it and the way you cook it, these all contribute to us being tuned to coming from this inner being and really seeing our highest stage and then bringing that into action and facing our life experiences and stories around in our lives, because the study here, and I really admire this aspect of soul education, is really about the depth of understanding what is the soul, but actually how do we be it. It's not about running to the Himalayas away from our families and finding a nice little cave somewhere and and just finding that tranquility, but it's about really exercising those inner qualities towards ourselves in a way that allows us to heal from our past. And the past, I mean, that's a big area to go into. And I think, in our lives, our past plays such a massive part of how we think today and how we're shaped today. And the inner work of healing really starts with letting go of our past. And when I'm able to just begin the journey, then eventually I'll be guided to what aspects of my past just need to heal very naturally. And I feel that's when the real work of letting go takes place, and the process of lightening happens. You be able to lighten yourselves. And I can say this so convincingly because I know I've been through it myself, but I've also witnessed many retreats and run many retreats where within the space of 2 days, people have transformed their lives, where they come feeling heavy and lethargic and disheartened, and they leave feeling a sense of purpose and direction and clarity, because the process we take them through in the Brahma Kumaris is how to really let go of rubbish. We hold on to so much rubbish, and because we just don't know how to let it go. So in order to create hope in our lives, we have to release that which is old. And when I'm continuing to hold on to that which is old energies, heavy energies, I'm not able to move on. I'm not able to, they will constantly drain me. And that sparkle of hope comes from that release that takes place of letting go fully. And once you've really let go of something, the only experience you will have is one of peace. Your mind won't be pulled by it anymore. So naturally, we will experience a contented, calming peace. So I just wanted to stop there and maybe just open up for any thoughts or comments or questions that you may have before we end with a meditation.
Thank you so much, Ash. Really, what you've given is all
feelings. You can appreciate certain aspects of your day as well. But I find that when you're beginning to heal, then it's really important to focus on the emotional energies of situations that have affected you, not your thoughts, because you'll write a bestseller about your thoughts. It's really about the feelings you've had in the day, situations that have bothered you. And this is more just kind of creating a feeling of respect towards myself, that I'm choosing to acknowledge what is happening in my feelings and emotions. And within a couple of weeks, you'll just begin to see a change in how you feel about yourself. I remember when I first started doing this, I felt very grounded. Actually, I felt very accepting of my weaknesses as much as my strengths and qualities. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a response that you were looking for. Another question was, I missed what you were saying about the ego. Could you repeat that? I must admit, I've forgotten what I said about the ego, but the one connection that I have with ego is anything false. So often when we look at the two worlds, ego is really the persona that has been created that interacts with the world outside. Yeah. And often when I look outside, everything that's attached to ego will be defined with my possessions, my job, my status, my wealth, and how people perceive me. So that all is ego, is how I identify, or how people see me and how I identify with the world. I may be a man, that's an ego. And so anything other than the truth about who I really am, which is I am a being that is separate to this body. I am a soul. And this body is nothing more than an instrument through which I express my energy. And when I'm affected by ego, then there will be feelings of, there'll certainly be negative emotions that will appear. When we hear this term, my ego's been hurt, it's often emotions that come up as a result of it. And where there's emotions, there's anger. So and that's the connection between ego being rocked and emotions taking place. So hopefully that just gives you an insight into ego on that basis. But at the Brahma Kumaris, we learn very much about how to step beyond the ego and into this space of I, yeah, the center of my forehead, and recognize the inequalities of goodness and experience this separation between any false identities, yeah, and experience myself as I am, yeah. And I think that's the beauty of learning about this, you know, the soul and the qualities of the soul. So the next question was, how can you stay consistent in spiritual growth? And I think the simple response to that is practice. When we're on this journey, and most of us have started this journey, then what begins to happen is we begin to see Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde appear very, very clearly inside of us. And, you know, when we're releasing ourselves from our egoic tendencies, which are very deeply knotted in, it takes time. Ego will not respond to force. If I force change upon me, force is violence, and any form of violence goes against the nature of the soul. Ego will melt with love. Where you see someone projecting their ego, if you respond with love and acceptance and openness, their egos will melt. And it's the same for us. Our egos will melt when we first uplift ourselves to see our value. So one of the biggest practices on the spiritual journey, as much as releasing negative emotions is important, seeing my value is exceptionally important, because that raises the vibration levels. And then from a positive space, I can look down on the situations affecting me and begin to see them as they are, not as I want them to be, not as they need to be, as other people see them, but as it is, truthfully. And then I can start bringing positive vibrations to that and positive attitudes towards it to change it. And so consistency in spiritual growth comes with practice. You know, no point meditating and then, you know, kind of stop meditating, or no point writing and stop writing, because this connection with myself is a constant effort. But it eventually doesn't turn into effort. It turns into spiritual curiosity of getting to know myself and really being connected to myself. And when that happens, actually, there's such a vibrancy in your life. You kind of feel alive. Every situation is an opportunity to grow rather than a burden to be released from. Two different mindsets. So I hope that kind of gives you some direction. It is to strengthen your practice. Whatever it is you do, do it more, do it consistently, and things will change. The next question was, is it better to write affirmations or say it inside ourselves? Personally, I feel you can do it both ways, but when you're first starting, saying it loud, funnily enough, has such a massive effect on you. It's like sometimes I find myself talking to myself aloud, and you know, I may have certain thoughts that may appear in the screen of my mind, and I will instantly pull myself up on it and be stern on myself. And vocalizing it is really important, because you can create what you hear, what the inner being hears, is a stern but loving energy that says, you know, do something different, or you're not going down there again. You've been there and you know what it's like. And vocalizing that helps us just push us in the right direction very quickly. And then, you know, combining it with internal affirmations is also very good. So when you're meditating, you don't want to come into sound. And that's where internal affirmations can really help us, where I can speak to myself in a positive way. And as those affirmations deepen and I experience the feelings of these affirmations, then actually my whole being, my vibration changes. Because whatever I feel, I radiate in the world. If I feel angry, I radiate that. And people can pick that up very easily. So affirmations change our energy. And the meditation commentaries that I'm sure Bradford will send you will be very positive affirmation led anyway. So it combines two in one. You're getting positive affirmations and an experience of meditation. I hope that covered your question. The next one was, how can you stay consistent? I think we've covered that one, in spiritual growth. Another question was how to protect ourselves from others' negative energies and vibrations at times when they're in pain and fearful. Find it a challenge to not engage with this and try to avoid, is this really destructive for me? I feel as though I can change situations at times with more self-awareness. I think that's a really good question. And often we can lose objectivity when we're in these situations where others are emanating negative energies and vibrations towards us. And we have to really discriminate and discern when someone is reaching out for help or when someone is reaching out for you to be an emotional support for them. When someone is wanting for you to be an emotional support where you just become their dumping ground, then actually that's going to leave you completely drained. And they won't want to change. Knowing that, truthfully for ourselves, means that we can't help them as much as we would like to. They are not ready to receive help because they're not ready to face their own inner worlds. We can't actually help anybody. Everyone has their own story and everyone will be guided in their way. But one of the things that we can do is vibrationally emit energy. It's amazing. 95% of our communication is vibrational. When we come into words, words do not describe the feelings we hold for each other. If our vibrations are clean and are high and are strong, then people will receive them and feel different. And the best example I can give you is one of my grandfather, who was in the last 7 years of his life became such a strong yogi. Became such a strong yogi that his presence was really peaceful. And I remember I used to be a bit of a chatterbox back in those days. When I'd go and pick him up for lunch and he'd be sat in the car, but I'd find myself really being soothed by his presence because he was radiating this beautiful, peaceful energy, and it just quietened me, made me feel very connected to myself. Nothing needed to be said. So the power of our vibrations can do all of the talking as long as we decide to change them. If other people's issues and emotional baggage is affecting us, we're in no position to help anybody and we will be emotionally drained. At that point, we have to decide what is right and what is wrong for us. So I hope that answered your question. So would it be good if we maybe ended with a meditation commentary, Margaret? Yeah?
Yes, please, if you don't mind. We'd love
Sure.
it. Yes.
Brilliant. Lovely. So so just make yourselves comfortable in your seats. And just take a deep breath and release. And just turn your attention now to the center of your forehead. And place yourself in a little room behind the eyes. And as you look through the window of your eyes, you begin to see the world on the outside and experience yourself to be the one on the inside. And if any thoughts appear that aren't necessary, just let them pass in the screen of your mind. And just keep your attention in this present moment. And as you deepen your breathing, recognize a stillness emerging inside of you, a quietness, a calmness. And this feeling of inner quietness allows me to connect with my core quality of peace. And when I'm able just to hold that experience of peace and just enjoy it, my mind is still, and my heart begins to open. And I recognize that when I experience this quality of peace, I can begin to take care of myself. I can begin to look inside with kindness. And kindness is not something that I do. Kindness is who I am. And when I recognize that I am kindness, then I can start to be kind to myself. And one way that I can be kind to myself is to see my value and appreciate that which is good inside of me. And to see myself as this being of positivity. These seeds of kindness will emerge feelings of kindness internally. And it will then allow me to deal with situations that I'm facing with kindness and care. And when I recognize myself to be separate to this body, then I will naturally only bring my highest qualities into whatever it is I do. And with that vibration, I can change situations very easily. I can create feelings of hope internally and be fully released from any disheartenment. And all I need to do is to start today, is to start to care for myself and care for my inner world. just as you would if your body is hurting. You would care for it. In the same way, if I am seeing the signals of pain internally, let me not reject them. Let me not suppress them. Let me be kind to them. And let me recognize that my inner being is trying to talk to me through them. And this level of self-respect will change your attitude towards yourself. And it will allow you to be released from situations and obstacles and challenges easily finding the right solutions and easily rebuilding faith in the self and your self-confidence. When I recognize myself to be this being of light, in order to draw spiritual energy and strength, I also recognize that I have a spiritual parent, someone who is completely accepting of who I am, who also is a point of light. And when I'm able to connect with that divine source and draw in his strength and unconditional love, then I can be raised from wherever I am, from the depth of disheartenment, and I can fully heal from anything that I'm going through. So let me recognize the care for the self, and let me recognize this subtle connection with my divine parent. And let me experience that.